Hello, everyone, and welcome to Association Amplified Live. I'm Dan Stevens, president of TaleWind Digital, and today we're talking about ASAE's State of Association report. It's a year of pulse polling pulled into one picture of the sector: finances, meetings, workforce, advocacy, AI. There's a lot in it, and we're going to look at what's behind the numbers. My guest today is Amy Hissrich, Vice President of International Affairs at ASAE. Amy, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, great to have you here today. So let's get into it. And if you're watching live, put your questions in the comments as we go, and we'll get to them later in the show. But let's really dig into this report. Amy, this is the first report of its kind by ASAE, and there's a lot in it. Why build this report now? Was there a catalyst?
Yeah, I love the why now question. It's always one of my favorites. For the State of Association, the why now is really a confluence of a couple of different factors. First, the pace of change is accelerating. We were hearing anecdotally from our members, but it was really hard to gauge. They were experiencing some of the federal policy shift, some of the funding shift, some financial headwinds. I think that we all have experienced or seen over the past year. And what we couldn't exactly gauge was a certain subset the one that we're dialing our phones. So we wanted to really assess how broad were these implications at a macro.
Well, research is such a big part of every association's value. And so you just actually gave a nice tip to the audience about how they can use AI to accelerate pulse polling and use that. So that's wonderful. But let's get into some of our questions. Revenue diversification was one pattern I noticed is this push to diversify or create new revenue streams. What did you find in the report that's driving that?
Yeah, so we saw about 40% of respondents seeing a worsening financial picture. And so, of course, the need to build sustainable revenue. It's probably the single biggest through line for me. We saw it even in open-ended answers in non-financial pulse polls, just financial headwinds, revenue under pressure, traditional business models being challenged. But I actually think this goes back, and so I really appreciated this question because it allowed me to be a little bit more thoughtful about this. I think it goes back to the pandemic, and we had been seeing a push for new business models even before we started doing this pulse polling and State of Association initiatives. And I think it was because our traditional business models, specifically in-person events, were so disrupted during the pandemic that when things reopened, I think a lot of associations really understood, okay, we had a lot of risk and revenue encapsulated into one big program. And so we need to pause and think about how to diversify, de-risk, and build portfolios that anchor into member value, but are still financially sustainable.
Right. And yet it does seem like that many associations have gone back to the event as their number one revenue driver. So did the report uncover some new ideas and new initiatives in this area, or was it just focusing really on the pain and the need for change?
Yeah, I saw the same thing where I think everybody came back from reopening, and we did want to get back to face-to-face meeting. There's tremendous value there. But we see it in some of the international participation right now for U.S. meetings. That's down from just about every geographic region into the U.S. So I think we're seeing that pendulum, because I'd agree. I think we did sort of say, oh, great, that was a one-off blip. Okay, we're kind of back to business as usual, but we'll still look at the diversification, the new business model, but thank goodness we can, get back to the revenue piece, getting back on track. And I think the last 18 months, we've seen that pendulum start to go back again. And what we did see from the meetings, because we always ask, okay, what are your challenges? But what are you doing? And one of the things I'm super proud of within the sector is that people are trying so many things to try to iterate their way to financial sustainability and to try to help their members and serve their missions and help their members. Both ways work. But we saw things from doing fewer, bigger meetings to the exact opposite of doing more smaller regional meetings. So it really seems like organizations, and I really applaud this, are thinking, what's right for us? How do we best serve our audience and the needs we have, be that upskilling, be that convening? So they seem to be looking at where are our members, what are we doing with our meetings, and how do we best evolve them in the environment that we're seeing.
That's great. And on the monetization side, sponsorship comes up too, and the model seems to have shifted. What do you think sponsors are looking for, and what changes are you seeing from associations today?
Yeah, we actually just did a revenue summit, and one of our sessions was related to sponsorship. And I don't want to paint with too broad a brush, but what seemed to be the trend here is focus on long-term relationships built on candor, trust. So we seem to be in a moment where people are recognizing, and I've been in the association community almost my whole professional life. So we're coming up on 30 years. I clearly started when I was 8. But we're a relationship-driven community. We always have been, but it feels like that's even more important now. So from my experience, and my origin story is on the industry partner side. But sponsors want to be part of the conversation. They're part of the community, and they want to be they are thought leaders, and they want to be seen as such. They're problem solvers, and they're here to help us co-create for our members, their clients. We serve the same space. So it really does seem to be that shift and that anchoring into relationship versus a transactional mindset.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's great. And, we're seeing that, as we work with the sponsor community, they've kind of had their hand up for a while going, we want to be more than, a check. We want to engage and tell that part of the story, and they can really add value on case studies and what research they've done, whether it be on products or services and so forth. So that's good to see. But the number one issue that came up at the top, and seems to be an issue for many associations, was retention and engagement. It came out as the number one challenge above revenue. And when associations look at why that's happening, do they know what's driving it, or is it still a bit of a guess for them?
Well, it actually is completely not surprising to me that membership would be the number one challenge, the number one opportunity, given the unique role that associations are. We exist for our members. They are in service of our mission to our members, our animating principle. They're our North Star. So I would expect that to be true in any environment at any time, because I think it underscores the uniqueness and strengths of the association sector, that we recognize we're here to provide value, which then leads to engagement, which then leads to revenue. So revenue is a downstream outcome, and our members are upstream focus and making sure that we understand what value do they need, what format do they need it in, and how do we best serve them. So that goes back to exactly the same thing I was saying with the sponsor answer. This is about relationships. This is about trust. This is about ensuring that we are embracing our role as conveners and as leaders of our industries and professions, be that through advocacy, upskilling, credentialing, career pathing, et cetera.
And and at the same time, with all of those items that you mentioned, like also trying to find the segmentation and that makes sense so that you can treat as close to as possible every member as an individual, right? And did that personalization come up in that analysis?
It comes up, but it comes up, and I know we'll get to AI. I'm seeing it more in AI. I want to be as accurate as I can. We didn't do a deep dive into membership. It is the biggest piece. So our membership, we see the data trends, the why of that. That's more coming from all of the work that we've done there. But where we see personalization come up is in that AI piece, because now the tools have evolved to such a degree that you can start using those pretty effectively to do that personalization piece. But I think a lot of the opportunity around membership goes back to, I think you can do some of that member service, some of the content and curation pieces, some of the synthesis and analysis pieces with AI. But that member piece, we are conveners, and that is a uniquely human still, hopefully for the foreseeable future, uniquely human skill. That role of associations as trusted sources of information, that's still something. Sure, there can be elements of personalization there, but to me, that is about anchoring into being that maintainer of the body of knowledge, to being the organization that sets and recommends standards for that industry or profession, or that offers that credential, and that is that trusted source. So to me, it's less about technology and more about core value.
And so many institutions have eroded trust, and yet associations remain very, very strong in trust, which is a big element leading into that discussion on AI. So wouldn't be a discussion without today without talking about AI. Amy, as AI changes the way people search and interact with content, how does this change the way associations need to operate?
Yeah, I've been thinking about this for such a long time. I came into this space. Well, now I am going to date myself. Back in the late 1990s, and so for those of us who can remember that far back, and I recognize it won't be all of us, that was a moment of disruption, because the internet was really just taking off, and my first entry into the workspace was everybody saying, that is going to disrupt what associations are, and rumors of the sector's death were tremendously exaggerated at that time. Full stop on that sentence. Whole different thought over here. This is another moment of disruption where these tools are, I think, changing some of the key value propositions. So for a long time, I really thought that a core value that associations provided was in their ability to synthesize and analyze information from their members and that community, and put that out in ways that were in service to the membership, and if that was part of the mission, to the general public. AI is great at that. So that is something that I think we can rely less on staff and volunteers. There's still certainly a vetting piece. I do not want to understate using AI responsibly, but what AI can't do yet is that convening part. It cannot replace what I'm starting to call the input. So when we're doing the pulse polling, just to use that as a living example, it is not replacing. It's not coming up with what those challenges are that we're hearing from our members. It's not saying what the solutions that they're trying are, and it's not trying to say which of those solutions are being effective. That's for the humans to determine. What it's doing is saying, I have 500 pieces of disparate information in a faster way than I can. It's saying these are the three themes that are emerging most commonly or most frequently within that. And then it's my job as the staff resource for that to check and make sure that that's accurate, to make sure that we are using AI in tandem with human intelligence. But again, they do a really pretty good job at this point. They're pretty mature in analyzing, synthesizing, and returning that data. But the human piece for convening and being that trusted, vetted source, I think, is still a great opportunity for associations to maintain and shift their value proposition just a little bit.
Well, and lean into the trust and the peer-to-peer experiences that only an association can provide as well. And so, no, I agree with you completely. What to do today, Amy? Maybe one last question before we open it up to the audience. Given the report, what's one thing associations could do today to start acting on this report?
Yeah, so I always like to go counter than what's expected. What I saw, and again, I think I mentioned earlier, it was so heartening. This report really paints a picture of associations that are trying to innovate and iterate their way out of and through, which in some cases are pretty significant financial pressures and de-risk, diversify, et cetera. Within that, because I saw so much, what I'm really hoping associations do next is pause and breathe. We ask these questions at a time where at least the domestic policy environment was shifting pretty substantially, pretty quickly. So things were very variable. Sorry to use that construction there. And so it made sense to me that really there was a lot of activity. But with that activity, what we didn't see, we saw a lot of new program innovation, iteration, standing up new things, again, trying to get to that financial sustainability. What we didn't see was a lot of sunsetting, not surprising for anybody that's been in the space for a second. Somehow it's harder to stop doing than it is to start doing. But what I'm hoping associations do next is really take that pause, take that breath. Now that we've been in this for 12 to 18 months, depending on when our clock starts, to just pause and look strategically at the portfolios, that member value question, and then come up with strategies and processes to go forward. We were in a period of meeting the moment. Now I think we can be in a period of lead-in for the future.
Well, there was one comment in there that really struck with me, and that is it's harder to stop doing things than start. And I think many associations suffer from like, but we've always done this. Should I let go of it? And but as people pause and deal with this rate of change, there's no doubt, whether you're calling it stop or evolve, there's going to be some degree of change there. So let's open it up now to see if there's any question. But before we open it up to the audience for questions, Amy, is there anything else in the report that you feel needs to be shared, or should we take some questions?
I'd say let's get some questions in here.
Okay. Let's get my team to get a question up on the screen for me, and we can get going. Here's one. Are there any findings related to associations of different sizes? A small association is very different than a large, say, national or international one.
Yeah, I always look at staff size to see where staff size differs. I didn't really see, because of the nature of the questions that we were asking were such that actually didn't really come out. What we tended to see more, and this goes back to the financial performance piece, was a difference in professional and trade. So professional societies tended to be more, and every policy creates, again, a lot of the origin of doing the pulse polling came out of some of the federal funding changes that happened in early, I guess it was 25. Every policy has distributional consequences. So some industries and sectors are positively affected, others are less positively affected. And what we tended to see was the specific policy portfolio tended to not fully, but be less negative for some of the trade associations in aggregate than the professional societies. But that was really the main piece we saw there. And then some sectors, and I don't want to bore people going into each of them, but intuition held to what we saw in the data, which is things like the the healthcare sector more negatively or less positively impacted, but honestly, I can say negatively impacted than some of the other sectors.
Yeah, interesting. Well, obviously, a question is just about to surface here on AI. So how do we make our value visible to members? They won't compare us to AI on purpose, but we've had fewer questions come in that are related to AI. So how do you see people kind of balancing the fact that they can sit in AI and get information, but this trusted, vetted opportunity for people to lean into associations. How do you see that balance happening?
Yeah, and I want to clarify that any answer I will give at this point, because we don't have that in the data, would be just my opinion. And I did start in the space with 20 years on technology before I pivoted and got my master's in international relations. So I feel somewhat credible. AI is moving so fast that that pivot did happen after AI. But as an avid user and a frequent thinker of this, I would say, looking at the organization and understanding what you can put out in the public space and what you can't, and recognizing for some organizations, their value is in keeping some of that only available to their members. But to the degree that you can't, making sure that you are part of the answers in the tools that are crediting, and increasingly they are crediting where those answers are given. So if somebody isn't coming to you to get the answer, for a lot of associations, the important thing is that answer gets into the right consumer's hands, especially if that's in the general public, and say it's a medical or scientific piece of information. And to the degree that you can, you want to be attributed with that and be the origin source of that. So I would see it less competing with, but still being the steward of and the source of, and then collaborating with those tools. Because I think if we're in a competition mindset, it's going to be really tough.
Tough, but at the same time, if you do what you're saying, which is lean into the discovery of content, the discovery of your value and your mission, which, in AI terms is answer engine optimization, the trust factor of associations should mean that we go to the top. And so if our content is readable, even if it's, member only content, but we make certain things available in the formats that AI wants, it could be a real opportunity for, I think, people to look and say, there's so much information, I want to find that trusted source. And that's the opportunity for associations, don't you feel?
And that is why we have our Trust Associations campaign. We completely agree.
Absolutely. Was there anything in the data that contradicted what you expected when you went into it?
Oh, I love this question. I'd say the thing that I was, aside from the number of things associations are trying, but the other data point I was so heartened by is we see, and it relates to AI and staffing. I think in the news, we see all these reports of entry-level job roles being potentially the first impacts of AI and potentially some job displacement there. When we did our polling around association staffing, we saw that wasn't necessarily the case, that those entry roles certainly weren't being offloaded. Now, we didn't get deep into, are there potential vacancies that you aren't onboarding for, that you might have onboarded for, and it may start coming up there. But the initial findings, I think, were heartening for me, because I think about how do we get to the next generation of talent and workforce development if we don't onboard the entry level teams and keep in mind, what unique skills do humans continue to bring in.
Right. And those are the ones that not only need to be onboarded, but eventually sit on the committees and
that's exactly
maybe
right.
run boards and be impacted the way all of us have been by the value of being part of something bigger than themselves. Right.
That is so perfectly said.
So that's great. Well, we are timing to wind it up. Amy, thank you for joining us. There's been a great conversation. The State of Associations report is a free download from ASAE, and I encourage you all to get it. And for those of you who are on your way to remind ourselves the value of associations, we'll see you all at ASAE Annual in Indy. So thank you again, Amy. Appreciate your time today.
Thank you for having us. See you in Indy. Take care.
You bet. Okay, bye-bye now.
Bye-bye.